Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. I got the line in our kitchen on a Thursday night that looked like any other. I'm Daniel Mercer, 38, a financial analyst in Denver. I'd just set 2 plates on the table, grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, when she stepped back from me. Her face didn't show anger. It showed distance. She said, clear and practiced, "Trust has to be deserved." I didn't ask where it came from. I said, "I won't forget that." We hadn't been intimate in weeks. I could mark it on the calendar. I chose not to. We kept to our own sides of the bed. Morning kisses became nods. Dinners became logistics, her schedule, my deadlines, the dog's vet appointment. Nothing loud. Less of everything. Her phone stayed face down. In the bathroom, on the sofa, propped against a mug while she scrolled. Notifications came at odd hours, 1 buzz, then 3. When I asked simple things, "What's your plan for Friday? Do you need the car?" her answers were complete and empty. I didn't press. I wanted the truth to show itself. That afternoon I'd stopped by the store for her olive oil, and the herbal tea she said helped her sleep. I cooked, set the table, washed my hands, and walked in with the plates. She was at the counter, scrolling. The new lock screen was a beach at dusk, replacing our photo from Breckenridge. I noticed the change without drawing conclusions. When I reached to touch her lower back, she sidestepped. Then, "Trust has to be deserved." She didn't look up until after she said it. It sounded rehearsed. I said only, "I won't forget that." She waited for me to argue or apologize. I did neither. She moved past me, opened a cabinet, and took down 1 plate. Not 2. We ate at the same table, looking at different walls. She asked about a project at work like an item on a list. I answered with facts, numbers, dates, the next review cycle. She nodded without follow-ups. Twice her phone buzzed, and twice her hand moved fast. I didn't ask about her phone. Pressing makes it worse. The dishwasher beeped when I loaded it. She said she had work upstairs. Her laptop was already on the end table, power cord wrapped. I kept washing. When the sink cleared, I wiped the counter and set the tea box where she'd see it. She took it without comment and went up. It was quiet. I thought about the details that had added up. Gym sessions that ran long and ended with a shower before hello. Passwords changed without a conversation. Turning her body away on the couch. None of it, alone, was a verdict. Together, it showed a pattern. I went to my home office and sat at the oak desk from my father's apartment. I took out my notepad. I wrote the date. I wrote her sentence, word for word. Then I wrote what I could control: sleep, exercise, work performance, legal documents in order, finances tightened. A simple list. A plan to stop pretending. There were messages from my manager about forecasts and a note from HR about open enrollment. I handled both. I updated beneficiaries on a small policy I'd been meaning to fix. I confirmed my emergency contact. I didn't change it. I read the name and left it. I listened for her coming back down. Nothing. The dog came in, circled, and lay by my chair. I scratched his ear and kept writing. I reviewed what I felt, wrote it down, and made decisions that would last. I put away the notepad and went back to the kitchen. The second plate was still on the table. I wrapped it and put it in the fridge. I turned off the light and stood in the doorway. The room felt empty despite our things. You don't argue with a statement like hers. You accept the rule and apply it both ways. Upstairs, the bedroom smelled faintly of her lavender lotion. She was on her side of the bed, screen glow on her face, earbuds in. I showered, set my alarm, and lay down. No words. I stared at the ceiling and thought about the man I want to be at 40, not the man who wins or loses an argument on a Thursday. The house was quiet. Outside, distant traffic, 1 siren, wind against the windows. I told myself the truth. Tomorrow isn't for speeches. It's for actions. Before I fell asleep, I repeated her line to remember it. Trust has to be deserved. Fine. Then we'll both live under it. I didn't feel lighter. I felt steady. The kind that arrives when you stop asking a question that has already been answered. The next morning she was dressed before my alarm. No music or hairdryer, just the bathroom door and the quick motions of someone late to a meeting. Her phone lay face down on the counter beside her empty mug. When I moved toward the coffee maker, she slid the phone into her pocket. She didn't kiss me goodbye. "Calendar's packed," she said. "Don't wait up." It wasn't hostile. At the office, a text came at 10 a.m. Running drinks after work with the team. No place or names. Just noticed that my evening didn't include her. I replied, got it. Be safe. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. When I got home, she'd left a note about the dishwasher. Stop putting knives in point up. It's dangerous. We've been loading the same model for 4 years. I fixed the knives. In the laundry room, there was another reminder taped to the detergent. Use cold for delicates. You keep shrinking my tops. I use cold for everything. I peeled the tape off and threw it away. The tone wasn't helpful. It was a charge. Around 9, she came in smelling like citrus and a bar. She set her purse down, opened the fridge, and frowned at the leftovers. You always overcook chicken, she said. It wasn't overcooked. I asked, what's going on with us? She said, work's intense, and went upstairs. Friday, she changed the password on the shared grocery app. I saw the email. Your password was updated. I tried to log in and couldn't. I didn't ask for the new one. She also removed me from the streaming service I pay for. My profile was gone. Each action said, I can control what you access. Saturday was her friend day. She called it that. Sierra wants to try a new place in Rhino, she said. She bought a new jacket. I asked, you home for dinner? She said, probably late. Don't wait up. I nodded. All right. Enjoy. She blinked, surprised I didn't push. Then she left. She came back at 12:37 a.m., shoes in hand, tiptoeing. I was at the kitchen table. She half smiled. You're up. Couldn't sleep, I said. She poured water and leaned against the counter. I asked, is there someone else? She laughed once. That's what you jumped to? Because I have a life? It's a yes or no question. She rolled her eyes. No. She set the glass down. If you want to earn my respect back, stop interrogating me. I asked, how did I lose it? She said, it's not one thing. Then she walked past me to the stairs. Sunday morning, she said she was going to a book club. She left with an empty tote and came home with clothes. She called it retail therapy. I made sandwiches and set one on a plate for her. She ate half while scrolling and left the other half in the sink. I cleaned it up. She said, you always overreact to small messes. I didn't respond. Monday, she said over dinner, I need to see consistency. I asked, define it. Be on time. Follow through. Communicate better. I said, give me one concrete example. She said, you forgot to pick up my dry cleaning last month. That was true. I nodded. What else? She said, it's just a feeling. I said, okay. If it's a feeling, I can't fight it. But I can stop pretending we agree about what's happening. Tuesday, she left her phone on the counter while showering. The screen lit up twice with the same number. I didn't touch it. When she came back, she checked the log. Then she put the phone in her robe pocket. You're being weird, she said. I said, I'm being quiet. Midweek, she floated a trial separation. Maybe space would be good for us, she said while stirring a pot. I asked, space like separate bedrooms or separate leases? She said, you're making this dramatic. I said, I'm clarifying. She didn't answer. She turned down the burner and left the kitchen. I turned the stove off. Thursday, she repeated her line again, this time at the doorway as I put on my shoes. Trust has to be deserved. I said, then tell me what you need to see from me, exactly. She shook her head. If you don't know, that's the problem. I nodded. Got it. She was waiting for a flare-up. I gave her none. I started noticing how often her mother's name came up, how quickly the girls became a reference point, how her sentences began with they think instead of I think. Friday evening, she said, Mom says couples counseling only works if both people admit their faults. I asked, what does your mom think your faults are? She said, we didn't talk about me. I said, we never do. She said, you're impossible, and left the room. The pressure wasn't loud. It was procedural. Critiques instead of conversations. Rules without standards. Access given and taken back without notice. I kept asking short questions that had only 2 answers. She kept giving me paragraphs that meant nothing. When she tried to bait me, I let the moment pass. Saturday night, we went to a coworker's birthday. In the car, she scrolled the entire drive and got out before I turned off the engine. Inside, she stood 3 feet away from me for an hour and introduced me twice as Daniel. I stood there, shook hands, and watched. On the way home, she said, you were quiet. I said, so were you. Then I asked, you need the car tomorrow? She said yes. All day. I nodded. I'll work from home. By Sunday night, the message was written in actions, not words. She wanted me uncertain, apologizing, chasing a moving target labeled deserve. I wasn't going to do that. I asked myself what I control: my time, my resources, my boundaries, and my response. I brushed my teeth, checked the locks, and set my alarm. The dog settled at the foot of the bed. She turned away from me and took her half of the blankets plus more. I didn't plan speeches. In the morning, I'd stop playing it. I woke before the alarm and didn't lie there thinking. I got up, made coffee, and opened the laptop at the kitchen table. No announcement. The game ended last night. Today was paperwork. First, the bank. I'm the primary on one card with her as an authorized user. I removed the authorization and requested a new card shipped to my office. I set instant text alerts for any transaction over $20 on every remaining account. I turned off the contactless wallet connected to her phone and watch. One by one, I checked recurring charges and moved the essentials: mortgage, utilities, insurance, onto a personal card she can't access. Discretionary subscriptions got canceled. Next, the line of credit. I froze it and required branch approval for any draw. The joint savings stayed intact for now, but I set withdrawal limits and added a second factor approval that only pings my number. My paycheck direct deposit moved to a new bank entirely. I opened that account in 20 minutes and transferred a modest buffer to cover this month's bills. The rest stayed where it was until I had counsel on structure. I pulled my credit reports and put a freeze on new accounts in my name. I set monitoring on hers for alerts tied to our address. I downloaded 12 months of statements and saved them to an encrypted drive. I printed the last 3 for a paper file. Every download got a timestamp, then went into a labeled folder. This is what I do for a living. It isn't dramatic. It's organized. Passwords came next. Email, cloud storage, phone carrier, streaming, the grocery app she locked me out of. Everything under my name rotated to unique logins and hardware keys. Two-factor moved from SMS to an authenticator. I ended location sharing and shut off shared calendars. If we're measuring trust, we'll measure it with actual access, not speeches. She came downstairs as I was finishing. She glanced at the screen, then at the time. Early start. I nodded. Quarter end, I said. True enough. She poured coffee, checked her phone, and left it face down again. No kiss or questions. She went out the door saying she'd be late. I said, got it, and closed the laptop. At the office, I booked a consultation with a family law attorney my colleague recommended. Noon tomorrow. I wasn't filing anything. I was getting educated. I emailed myself a list. Assets titled jointly, assets in my name, retirement accounts, beneficiary forms, home deed, car titles, insurance. I added a column for documentation status. Green for complete, yellow for needs update, red for missing. The spreadsheet glowed mostly green by lunch. I called the bank's fraud department and added voice verification to every account. I set travel notices blocking out-of-state transactions unless initiated by me. I requested text confirmations for any address change. I placed a hold on courtesy overdraft. If someone tries to spend what we don't have, it should fail loudly. I asked the rep to read back the mailing address. Office, not home. The new cards would arrive where I could sign for them. At noon, I walked to the courthouse record site and confirmed the deed info. Title is joint tenancy with right of survivorship. I printed it, highlighted the legal description, and put it in the folder. I photographed every room after work. Nothing dramatic, just a clean inventory. Electronics, furniture, artwork, her handbags, my tools, the safe with our passports. I emailed the photos to myself and the encrypted drive. If anyone asks what existed on this date, I'll answer precisely. I stopped by the credit union for a safe deposit box. I placed original documents inside: birth certificate, passport copies, the deed copy, vehicle titles, the insurance binder. I added the USB drive with statements and photos. I kept a second encrypted drive at the office. Redundancy matters when stories change mid-sentence. Back home, I cooked a simple dinner and left her plate covered. I didn't ask where she was. I moved a few things in the house without comment. My social security card and passport out of the desk drawer and into the safe. Spare keys off the hook and into my pocket. The home office door now locks. I reset the Wi-Fi admin password and disabled guest access. I went through the budget and separated needs from wants. Mortgage stays on autopay. Utilities stay. Groceries continue. but as a cash envelope I control. Her boutique subscription boxes, rideshare credits, and the wellness app renewals ended. I listed every change in my notebook with a reason line. If anyone asks, I can show that every step protected the household, not my pride. She came in after 9. Citrus and the same loud bar. You didn't text, she said, like I'd missed a rule. Wasn't required, I answered. I ate, washed my plate, and left her covered dish in the fridge. She opened the container, sniffed it, and put it back without a word. Her phone buzzed twice. She turned away to answer. I took the dog out and scheduled tomorrow's attorney consult on my calendar as financial planning. Accurate. Upstairs, I packed a slim overnight bag and placed it in the closet. Jeans, 2 shirts, socks, chargers, a duplicate set of keys. Because men who know where they stand don't scramble later. I moved my emergency contact from her to my brother. I texted him, I'm fine. Making some changes at home. No crisis. He replied with a thumbs up and nothing else. That's why he's my emergency contact. Before bed, I wrote down the rule one more time. Trust has to be deserved. I added a second line, access follows trust. Then I wrote the next day tasks. Attorney at noon, update car insurance users, document jewelry, photograph the garage inventory, request payroll confirmation, and move the remaining autopays by Friday. I didn't explain any of this to her. She'll learn the way I learned, through actions. If she reaches for a card and it declines, that's a system response, not a speech. If she wants clarity, I have numbers and policies ready. If she wants to accuse, I have a ledger that shows food on the table and lights on in the house, with luxuries paused until the word we means something again. I turned off the light. The house felt the same as last night, but I didn't. I'd accepted her standard and applied it evenly. In the morning, I'd go to work like any other day, and the systems would do what systems do, draw lines you can't argue with. That's not revenge. That's maintenance. She called at 1:07 p.m., store noise behind her. Card declined. She tried again. Declined. What did you do? I stood by the office window and kept my voice level. Household bills are covered. Use your card for discretionary. She fired back the sentence from the kitchen like it proved a point. I gave the same reply as that night. I won't forget that. Then I said it clean. Trust is earned. Access tracks trust. Silence. Then the pivot I expected. You're controlling me. I answered with facts. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, paid. Subscriptions, bar tabs, impulse orders, paused. She hung up. 2 alerts arrived within 20 minutes. A block transfer from the joint account to a card I don't own, and a new device login to a service I'd just rotated. I filed both and went back to the quarterly variance notes. Work stayed steady. That helped. She came home early, keys loud in the bowl. We need to talk. I had paper ready. I laid a 1-page summary on the island. What still runs on auto, what is paused, and temporary rules. Numbered. Clear. She scanned and shifted to hurt. You embarrassed me. I pointed to the lines. The system returns a result. No one's performing here. She moved close, hand on my forearm. We can fix this if you stop being rigid. I didn't pull away. Rigid kept the lights on. Flexible got us here. She asked if I'd read her phone. No. Do you have a lawyer? I do consults when the facts change. That landed harder than the decline at the register. The room got quiet in the way it does when someone realizes the ground is fixed. At 7, I plated dinner. She refused, then ate standing up. I slid an envelope across the counter, a budget template. 3 columns, household needs, shared plans, personal wants. Fill the first 2. We'll fund them. The third is yours. You're treating me like a child. No. I'm returning this to a partnership or to 2 separate ledgers. Your choice. She went upstairs, came back in a dress and new perfume, stood close, fingers at my collar. We could reconnect. That used to work. I held eye contact and used her line. Trust has to be deserved. Her hand stopped. She stepped back. At 8 p.m. the group chat on the iPad lit up. One friend asked if I was still being controlling about the budget. Another suggested she stay elsewhere to make me understand consequences. I turned the screen face down and kept wiping the counter. I kept my temperature. She tried panic next. Are you leaving me? Not tonight. I'm also not staying in a marriage where access outruns honesty. I pointed to the envelope. First bridge back. She stared at it until the sarcasm drained out of her face. Then the question I'd been waiting for. What do you actually want? Clear and short. Truth about where you are and who you're with when you're not here. A budget we both signed. A counseling slot on the calendar with a real plan, not speeches. Counseling is for couples who can't talk. We've been talking for weeks and saying nothing. You're moving the goalposts. The posts are printed. She looked down at the sheet. A small nod. Not agreement. Recognition. I didn't touch her that night. I took the dog out and sent a single text to her mother. The house is safe and paid for. We're working on boundaries. No more. Bringing in a third party turns a two-person problem into a crowd. Later she stood in my office doorway. I don't like how this feels. Neither do I. She asked how it looks to people. I told her I built it so the kitchen doesn't burn down while we argue about recipes. She almost smiled and caught it before it left her mouth. She took the budget sheet upstairs. 15 minutes later, she set it back on the desk with 3 lines filled. Mortgage, utilities, groceries. Nothing under shared plans. Nothing under wants. Good. We'll draft numbers tomorrow after work. She searched my face for a crack, some apology, some joke. It didn't come. When she went to bed, I logged the day. Not points, events. Card decline, confrontation, reframe attempts, boundary statement, first compliance. One more line I hadn't expected. She listened, a little. Near midnight, a rideshare request to her friend's address hit the card, then canceled. Another small line. People tell you who they are with actions. They also tell you who they can be. I slept on my side of our bed, alarm set, phone charging in the other room. I didn't replay our conversation. I followed the rules she gave me and applied it evenly. In the dark, that finally felt like respect. Morning would bring its own tests. Maybe she'd double down. Maybe she'd fill more lines on the template. Perhaps the committee would hand her new scripts. None of that changes my part. I won't chase, won't escalate, won't drift. If she wants the house we built to feel like a home again, she knows where the first brick goes. If she doesn't, the lights still stay on, and I keep my footing. Either way, the message landed. When I said I wouldn't forget, I meant I would remember with actions. She felt it at the register. She heard it at the counter. Tonight she saw it on paper. That's what broke the game. Not a speech, just the absence of a loophole. By morning the house felt functional again, not friendly. She came down with the budget sheet, added a few more lines, insurance, dog food, a small line for gas, then set it on the counter like a test she didn't want graded. I dropped numbers into each category, nothing punitive, just realistic. She watched me total it and didn't argue. When I slid the signed copy across for her, she hesitated, then signed. A start, not a finish. At noon I met the attorney. We talked for an hour. I asked direct questions. What separation looks like in Colorado, what happens to the house, how to document spending, how to prevent more gray areas. She didn't push me to file. She gave me options and a worksheet. I left with a folder, a list, and the kind of calm you get when fog finally lifts enough to see lanes on the road. That night, she stood in the doorway of my office and said she made a counseling appointment for Tuesday at 5. I said I'd be there. She seemed surprised I didn't make a joke about it. I don't joke with fire alarms. We ate in the same room in different worlds. She kept the iPad upside down. Tuesday came. The counselor's office had soft chairs and a box of tissues on every table. She led with a speech about feeling unappreciated and suffocated. I let her finish. When it was my turn, I gave the counselor facts, dates, changes, the sentence that started the audit, the quiet inventory of distance. I didn't accuse. I described. We were asked to set 3 measurable actions each. Mine were simple. Shared calendar with locations when we're apart. A written budget we both follow. A standing weekly session for 3 months. No last-minute cancellations. She set her 3. Fewer interrogations. More affection and room to breathe. The counselor asked for specifics. I held my part. I won't ask where you are if it's on the calendar we both see. I won't withhold affection. I will withhold access if the calendar and budget fall apart. The counselor nodded. The word consequences made my wife stiffen, but she didn't argue. Day 1 after counseling, she added 3 entries to the calendar and came home when she said she would. Day 2, 1 entry, then a late return with no update. Day 3, nothing on the calendar and a photo from a restaurant at 10 p.m. sent to the girls that popped on the iPad before I turned off notifications for good. I didn't text. I slept, woke, and ran my morning list. When she finally came in, she tried the apologetic smile that used to work. I poured coffee for myself, and said we'd review the plan after work. That evening I laid out the sheet again and pointed to the blanks. She went defensive, then sentimental, then annoyed. You're treating this like a project. I am. We don't have a marriage problem that emotions will solve. We have a behavior problem that actions will solve. She stared at the page like it had insulted her. You're making me feel controlled. I said the line I'd been holding for the right moment. I'm giving you control with accountability. You decide your entries, your time, your money. You own the results. 2 more days, same pattern. One good, one vague. On Friday at lunch, I drove to a short-term rental I'd found near the office. 1 bedroom, month to month, clean. I signed, paid the deposit from my new account, and picked up keys. I wasn't running. I was removing the last lever she kept pretending belonged to her. If respect was going to be real, it had to exist without proximity. When I got home, she was on the phone with her mother. She covered the speaker with her hand and said they were just checking in. I nodded and went to the office. I printed 2 letters. The first outlined the budget, the calendar rule, and the counseling schedule. It also listed what happens if those aren't met: separate finances, separate addresses, counsel involved for all communication about property. The second was a short notice to my employer updating my address for mail. I put the employer form in my bag and left the other letter on the desk. She found it an hour later. She read it standing up, then again sitting down. You're moving out? I shook my head. I'm moving forward. You can move with me or not. Here are the terms. She looked ready to cry, then ready to fight, then ready to bargain. I didn't hold any of those doors open. Is this an ultimatum? It's a standard. You asked for deserved trust. This is how it's deserved and maintained. Saturday morning, I packed a small suitcase and the dog's bed. I left the furniture, the big TV, the expensive blender she likes. I took my files, clothes, tools, and the ring I'd stopped wearing last week. I set my house key on the counter and replaced it with a coded door lock she could change later. I gave her a printed schedule for the dog: walks, food, vet contact, flexible, simple. She nodded and didn't meet my eyes. By noon, I was in the new place. It didn't feel like freedom. I hung 2 shirts, plugged in a lamp, and opened the folder from the attorney. I sent a short email: initiate separation agreement. No emergency orders needed. House expenses will be paid per attached budget through month end. Counsel to counsel after that. I attached the budget. I CC'd no one else. 10 minutes later, I got a calendar invite from her for counseling next Tuesday. I accepted. That night she called. Twice. Then a text. I wasn't ready for you to actually leave. I typed and deleted 3 drafts. I settled on 1 sentence. Respect is not a feeling, it's a pattern. I put the phone face down and let the message sit there doing the work I used to do with speeches. Sunday, I unpacked slowly, took the dog to the park, then bought a small table and 2 chairs. One for me, one for whoever I trust next. Maybe her someday. Perhaps no one for a while. My brother came by with a toolbox and didn't ask questions. We installed a deadbolt, and then he left. Simple as good. Monday morning, I woke to a calmer head than I've had in months. At lunch, my attorney emailed draft terms. Balanced, clear, not vindictive. That afternoon, she sent a photo of the filled calendar for the week and a screenshot of the budget app showing her categories match mine. No apology, just the data I'd asked for. I replied with a single word: received. Maybe this ends with signatures and a sold house. Perhaps it doesn't. Either way, the decision is no longer hiding under feelings. It's on paper, on calendars, and habits. If she keeps the pattern, there's a path. If she drops it, there's a plan. I won't wait for mood swings to set policy. I won't argue with people who send me scripts written by committees. I'm finished negotiating my self-respect. She said trust has to be deserved. I agreed and showed her how that looks when a man applies it to himself, his time, and his money. If she walks toward it, we'll meet on solid ground. If she walks away, I won't follow. I already know how to stand.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.